The cracked casserole dish slid across the table and stopped right in front of me with a dry ceramic scrape that somehow sounded louder than all 20 voices in the room. Conversations died in pieces. A fork paused halfway to someone's mouth. Ice shifted in a glass. From the kitchen, I could hear the low buzz of the refrigerator, and under that, the sound of my own heartbeat, hard and steady, pushing up into my throat. My mother-in-law, Susan, stood at the end of the dining table in a red sweater set and pearls, smiling with that polished, church lady composure she wore whenever she was about to do something cruel in a way she could later call thoughtful. 2 minutes earlier, she had handed her daughter, Melanie, a pair of diamond earrings in a velvet box. She had handed me a cracked casserole dish with one handle glued back on. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I did not cry. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was that I did not laugh it off either. I didn't say, "Oh, how vintage." I didn't say, "You shouldn't have." I didn't reach for my purse and walk out. I just looked at the dish, then looked up at Susan, and felt something inside me go very still. My husband Adam was sitting 3 chairs to my right. He had gone pale so fast it was almost impressive. He stared at the tablecloth, then at his water glass, then somewhere beyond me, as if maybe if he looked far enough away, this moment would belong to somebody else. That was what Adam did when life demanded courage. He stepped backward inside himself and hoped silence would count as innocence. "Actually," I said, and my voice came out calmer than I felt, "I brought something for you too, Susan." The room stayed quiet, but it changed. It wasn't shocked silence anymore. It was waiting silence. To understand why a broken casserole dish on Christmas Eve could make a whole room stop breathing, you need to understand the year that came before it. You need to understand me and Adam and Susan and the small, careful ways a person can be pushed toward the edge without anyone ever raising their voice. My name is Hannah. I'm 28 years old and I live just outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm a licensed plumber. I spend my days under sinks, inside utility rooms, in crawl spaces, fixing things most people only notice when they stop working. Water lines, drains, pressure valves, old pipes that rattle like bones in the walls. I'm good at my job. Very good. I can hear a bad pressure regulator from a room away. I can tell by the smell whether a leak is fresh or old. I can walk into a house and know within 5 minutes where the problem started. People are not so different, I've learned. They leak in patterns too. I met Adam 3 years ago when his garbage disposal backed up and flooded half his kitchen. He'd tried to fix it himself, which is how I found him standing ankle-deep in water with a wrench in one hand and regret all over his face. He was handsome in a soft, approachable way. Dark hair that never stayed flat. Kind eyes. The kind of man who made you feel safe before you had any evidence that you were. He was 34, worked in operations for a regional medical supply company, and had a 9-year-old daughter named Lucy from his first marriage. Lucy was serious and funny in the same breath, with a habit of asking enormous questions at very casual moments. She loved astronomy, hated peas, and was devoted to a one-eyed rescue cat named Beans, who slept on the foot of her bed like he had survived war and expected respect for it. I fell in love with Adam gradually, first with his patience, then with the way he listened, then with the picture he painted of a future that sounded steady and warm. We got married after a year and a half. We rented a 2-bedroom townhouse in Hilliard with thin walls, a tiny backyard, and a dishwasher that made a grinding sound no one could identify. Lucy stayed with us every other week. I painted the second bedroom pale yellow and helped her tape glow-in-the-dark stars to the ceiling. For a while, it felt like building something real. Susan made sure I never got too comfortable inside it. I want to be fair to her. She was not loud, not dramatic, not the kind of mother-in-law people joke about on sitcoms. Susan was 62, elegant, organized, and deeply committed to the belief that criticism delivered in a gentle tone did not count as criticism. "Hannah, sweetheart, plumbing is such hard work for a young woman. Hannah, all those chemicals under houses, are you sure that's healthy long term? Hannah, I just worry that men sometimes feel self-conscious when their wives do jobs like that." Everything was a concern. Everything was coated in sugar so thick you almost felt guilty for tasting the poison underneath. If she came to our house, she brought a pie and rearranged my kitchen cabinets while complimenting my work ethic. If I cooked, she'd say, "You're improving." If I wore work boots to family lunch because I came straight from a job, she'd glance down and ask if I had forgotten to change. She once told me, smiling, that I had such practical hands. Adam would hear it. He would wince sometimes. He would squeeze my knee under the table, or change the subject, or say, "Mom, come on." But he never really stopped her. Never in a way that cost him anything. That was the pattern. Susan applied pressure, Adam avoided it. I absorbed it. The trouble with pressure is that people think they can keep adding it forever if there's no visible crack. The first real crack came in November. I found a receipt in Adam's jeans pocket while sorting laundry. It was for a furniture delivery in Dublin, Ohio, to an address I didn't recognize. Sectional sofa, bar stools, queen mattress, total paid $4,860. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I thought maybe it was something for work. Then I noticed the last 4 digits on the payment method. It wasn't our joint card. It wasn't any card I knew. I asked him about it that night. He barely looked up from his phone. "Work apartment," he said. "Temporary setup for a consultant team." I remember standing there in the kitchen with a wooden spoon in my hand, smelling garlic in the pan, and feeling that answer land wrong. Too fast, too smooth, like a patch job over a rotten pipe. A week later, I found a bank notification on the tablet we kept in the living room. Same bank as our joint account, different account number. Balance, $36,214. When I asked about that, he said it was a bonus account his company used for travel reimbursements. That was when I stopped asking and started paying attention. I am a plumber. My work is following hidden lines through walls until I know exactly where the water is going. So I did what I do best. I traced the line. Over the next 2 weeks, quietly, while going to jobs and making dinner and helping Lucy with math homework, I gathered pieces. A parking permit tucked into Adam's briefcase. A digital utility bill forwarded to our shared email by accident. A property tax notice addressed to Adam and a woman named Kelsey Morgan. A condo in Dublin, 2 bedrooms, recently purchased. Kelsey worked in the same office building Adam did. I learned that from a company holiday photo someone had posted publicly online. There she was beside him in a group shot, both of them holding paper cups and smiling too easily for people who were supposedly just coworkers. I didn't scream. I didn't break plates. I didn't confront him in the driveway like women do in movies. I made copies. I went to a lawyer named Rebecca Sloan, whose office sat over a nail salon in Upper Arlington and smelled faintly like coffee and paper and expensive caution. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked sharp questions in a calm voice and told me which documents mattered, which accounts needed tracing, and what to do next. "Do not warn him," she said. "Quiet gives you leverage." So I stayed quiet, and then Christmas Eve came. Susan hosted every year in the big brick colonial she and my father-in-law Richard had owned for decades. There were stockings on the mantel, 2 dining tables pushed together, expensive candles burning, and the usual performance of family warmth with all its hidden trapdoors underneath. I spent almost my entire December bonus on that dinner. Smoked turkey, rosemary potatoes, green beans with browned butter, homemade rolls, apple pie, pecan pie, and a 3-layer caramel cake Lucy had begged me to make because she liked the kind with too much frosting. I cooked for 2 straight days. I loaded everything into my car and drove it over in foil trays, while Susan stood in her kitchen telling me where oven mitts were in a house I had been visiting for 3 years. Dinner itself was almost normal. Richard told old stories from his days as a firefighter. Melanie talked about the yoga studio she wanted to open. Lucy fed scraps of roll to Beans under the table until her mother caught her and gave her a look. Adam laughed twice, too loudly both times. Susan floated around refilling glasses, touching shoulders, managing the scene like a conductor. Then came the gifts. Richard got a watch. Melanie got the diamond earrings. Melanie's boyfriend Chris got tickets to a basketball game. Lucy got a telescope and gasped so hard she almost cried. Then Susan reached down beside her chair and lifted the cracked casserole dish with both hands. "Hannah," she said brightly, "I know how much you enjoy cooking for family. This belonged to my mother. I thought it suited you." There are insults so precise they almost deserve respect. I picked up the dish and turned it in my hands. Hairline crack down one side, old glue around the handle, burn mark on the bottom. I thought about the money I had spent, the hours, the years of smiling through comments. I thought about the hidden bank account, the condo, the furniture receipt. I thought about Adam sitting there saying nothing, his silence as familiar to me now as the smell of copper pipe. Then I set the dish down gently. "Actually," I said, "I brought something for you too, Susan, and I think everyone here should hear it." No one moved. I reached beside my chair and lifted a large white envelope from my tote bag. I had brought it in with the desserts. Nobody had asked what was in it. "Susan," I said, "you've spent a lot of time worrying whether I belong in this family, so I figured tonight was as good a time as any to explain why I won't be trying anymore." Adam finally looked at me then, truly looked. His face changed in stages: confusion, recognition, fear. I pulled out the papers and laid them on the table one by one. Bank statements, property records, utility bills, a copy of the deed. "Adam," I said, "I need you to look at these." He didn't touch them. He only stared. The whole room seemed to narrow around the sound of my voice. "For the last several weeks," I said, "I've been trying to understand why money kept disappearing from our household while I was covering groceries, bills, and Lucy's school supplies. These documents answer that." Susan's smile thinned. "Hannah, maybe this is not I'm not finished." That stopped her cold. I turned one of the pages so Richard could see it too. "This is the deed to a condo in Dublin, purchased 5 months ago. The owners are Adam Walker and Kelsey Morgan." Melanie made a small sound into her wine glass. I kept going. "These are statements from an account I didn't know existed. More than $36,000 moved through it, while our joint account kept running low. These are delivery receipts for furniture sent to that condo. This is a utility bill linked to Adam's email." Richard looked at his son. "Is this true?" Adam swallowed but said nothing. Richard asked again, quieter this time. "Adam, is it true?" "Yes," Adam said. Susan sat down hard in her chair. For the first time since I had known her, she looked old. "It isn't what it looks like," Adam started. That almost made me laugh. "It looks like you used our marriage to finance your next life," I said. "So unless there's a second explanation involving identity theft and very selective amnesia, I think it looks exactly right." Lucy was in the living room by then, thankfully distracted with the telescope and her cousins. I had made sure of that before I ever stood up. Susan found her voice first. You had no right to dig through his things. The documents came through our shared devices and our shared mail, I said. And the money came out of a life I was helping build. Melanie whispered, "Oh my God," like she had been saying it internally for several minutes, and it finally escaped. I slid one final paper from the envelope and laid it beside the rest. I filed with an attorney 3 days ago, I said. This is the notice. Future communication can go through her office. Then I looked at Susan, really looked at her, and all the careful years between us fell away. You gave me a broken dish because you thought that was my place. Useful, grateful, quiet. Something that serves and doesn't speak. But I am speaking now. And for once, I'd like you to hear me clearly. Nobody interrupted. I did belong here, I said. I was the one cooking the meals, paying the bills when things got tight, showing up for your granddaughter, keeping this whole thing warmer than it deserved. If I didn't belong, it wasn't because I failed your family. It was because your family failed me. Richard closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, he nodded once. Not agreement exactly, more like acknowledgement. The kind people give when truth enters a room and no one can push it back out. I gathered my purse, my keys, and the empty envelope. Then I picked up the cracked casserole dish. Susan blinked. You're taking that? Yes, I said. I brought a full meal in better dishes than this. Feels like a fair exchange. And then I walked into the kitchen and packed up the containers I had brought. Not the food, just the dishes that were mine. My hands were steady. That part still amazes me. Adam followed me as far as the hallway. Hannah, please. I turned. He looked wrecked. But not wrecked because he had hurt me. Wrecked because the walls had finally split and he was standing in the water. I was going to tell you. When? He had no answer. That's what I thought. I walked out of Susan's front door into the freezing dark with the cracked dish tucked under one arm. My breath made white clouds in the air. I sat in my truck and cried, with both hands on the steering wheel until I couldn't anymore. Then I drove home. The divorce took 5 months. Rebecca was excellent. Quiet, precise, impossible to intimidate. The hidden money mattered. The condo mattered. The fact that marital income had been diverted mattered a lot. By the end of it, I received a fair settlement, enough to start over without panic living in my chest every morning. Adam moved into the condo in Dublin. Kelsey, as it turned out, liked minimalist furniture and did not enjoy conflict, which was unfortunate for her because she had chosen a man built entirely out of avoidance. Lucy still calls me. Not every day, not on a schedule, but often enough. Her mother and I had coffee one afternoon, just the two of us. She stirred her drink for a long time and then said, Lucy loves you. I'm not taking that away from her, because he's an idiot. I laughed for the first time in weeks. So Lucy still visits sometimes. Beans comes too, in a carrier he hates with theatrical passion. We make pancakes. We watch documentaries about space. We argue about whether Pluto deserved better. As for Susan, she has not apologized. But once, in March, she mailed me a card with no return address. Inside was a single sentence in careful blue ink. I hope you are well. It was not enough, but it was the closest she had ever come to honesty. The cracked casserole dish sits in my kitchen now on top of the refrigerator. I don't cook in it. I keep pencils in it, takeout menus, spare batteries, random things that need holding. It turns out broken things can still be useful when somebody honest decides what they are for. I'm still a plumber, still good at my job. Better, maybe. There's something clarifying about surviving betrayal. You stop confusing politeness with goodness. You stop calling neglect love. You stop mistaking silence for peace. Sometimes the thing that humiliates you in public is also the thing that frees you in private. Sometimes the ugliest gift on the table turns out to be evidence. And sometimes the moment you finally speak is the exact moment your life begins sounding like your own. If you like this story, subscribe to my channel for more beautiful